भद्रं कर्णैभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागं सस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवा स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमि स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Let us now pray together. We offer our salutations to the all-loving being who endows all beings with consciousness. We meditate on the Lord who is the origin of the universe. Lord, Thou abidest in all, Thou art all, Thou assumest all forms, Thou art the origin and goal of all, Thou art the self of all, Thou art existence, knowledge and bliss. Salutations unto Thee. May the world be peaceful, may the wicked become gentle, may all creatures think of mutual welfare, may their minds be occupied with what is spiritual and abiding. May our hearts be immersed in selfless love for the Lord. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Let us meditate on the center of our consciousness, our innermost being. It is luminous, unchanging, in the midst of all changes. It is perfect. It is beyond the limits of time and space. Let us identify ourselves with this core of our being, our true self. It is the source of bliss, source of true peace. It is all love. Om. Peace, peace, peace. Om. Asatu ma sadgamaya tamasu ma jyotirgamaya mrityormam amritam gamaya. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge, and from this limited mortal existence to the immortality. Om. Peace, peace, peace. As you have certainly, I am sure, guessed that the title of today's talk, Symptomatic and Asymptomatic Carriers, is connected to these words that are very current in this situation of this pandemic caused by coronavirus. The real problem with this coronavirus, or let us say one of the major problems associated with it, is that a person can be a carrier of this disease, carrier of this infection, without showing any symptoms of carrying it. In most cases, a person who is carrier of the disease shows the symptoms that there would be the disease would be showing on the person of that infected or carrier fellow. For example, a person who is carrier of flu will be showing many symptoms already with him or her. There would be fevers, there would be, say, a running nose, cough, congestion, weakness, and so forth. Already that person is also taking treatment for that. And so everybody knows that this person can transmit the disease. But with this coronavirus, what is happening is that a person who does not show any symptom, is not even feeling any problem, is not taking any treatment, is not sick at all, can still give others that sickness. So, this gave me the idea of this topic, this title, but about the transmission of this spiritual awareness or spiritual wisdom that we get from others. They are also the carriers of this wisdom, carriers of spirituality, can be divided into these classes that they are symptomatic and asymptomatic. And let us see how these are. It will be an interesting study, and it will also tell us about our getting associated with different people and to get the spiritual essence from them. So, the first class, that is the symptomatic carriers, that you see that they are obviously, there is a circle of spirituality around them. They would be living in a religious place, a temple, church, or a hermitage. Then these places will be bearing a very serene, peaceful look, and there is a palpable sense of tranquility. That, for example, I saw many times people coming in Vedanta society here or in many such places as well, that They come not necessarily for any religious instructions or for meditation or for just having a holy company. No, they don't have that intention. They have just come for some repair works, some maintenance work, for a completely secular purpose they have come here. And many of them, some immediately, some after coming for a few days, have remarked that it is so peaceful and nice feeling here, that now what happens, this place is like that. It has that outward, these symptoms of a transmitter, a carrier of peace, a carrier of spiritual wisdom. People who are such carriers, you see, they have the external signs. They look like, say, a mendicant, a monk, or a spiritual teacher. They are well known also for that. So you see, as they are well publicized. They have websites. There are many who speak about them. And so people know about that. They are symptomatic carriers. That yes, you can approach to them. You can approach them for getting it. Like you approach to, say, a grocery store, it is well advertised, publicized, and you know where to go to pick up your groceries. You go approach that place, and there is the grocery, you buy from there. So there are many such personages who have these symptoms, that they are the carriers of such wisdom. They give lectures, and then they give the spiritual instructions. Not only that, they are actually capable of transforming a person's life, detaching that person from this source of suffering to source of joy. It is, we all seek joy, but if we are, tied to the source of suffering, then we will look for somebody who can make us free or show us how to get freed from this source of suffering and connect to the source of joy. And we get connected to the source of suffering, that also because of the misperception. We think that that is source of joy. Nobody consciously goes to the source of suffering. But we get connected to that, thinking that that is source of joy. And then once we get connected, we find no way to separate ourselves, and we look for the help, that how we can get disconnected from this and get connected to that. So it is such personages we approach, and they help us to change. And they disconnect us from this worldly, so-called worldly ties, and then tie us to our spiritual connection, and thus our life changes. So this is as the symptomatic carriers. One example just we can give, say, Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda, a well-known figure, especially after he went to West and spoke at the Parliament of Religions. He himself writes in a letter that now I have received all this fame. He became famous in America and in India, everywhere, and people started coming to him, seeking this spiritual illumination. He had those symptoms around him. He had that that glory about him, that luster about him. His words were really having that immense wisdom, the ring of ultimate truth in them, and an assurance. So, his speech, his appearance, his life, everything had the obvious, clear symptoms of being a carrier of wisdom. So, you can go to that person. And then they also leave, you see, there are the meditation centers, there are churches, prayer halls, where people go expecting that, and they get their expectations more or less fulfilled one way or the other by coming to such carriers. They are symptomatic carriers of spiritual wisdom. So that is one category. There is another category that, as you can imagine, that asymptomatic carriers. There are people who are imbued with actual that inner tremendous knowledge of the self. They are full of devotion and they can transmit it, but they do not put on those signs at all. They are not even conscious of having to do that. It is, they are carriers, but people generally do not come to know about them, except when one gets it, that person informs the others, hey, please, you want that, go there. So that is, and thus people go gradually to them, but they do not have much external signs of this. They would be living in the regular ordinary places of living, like you may find that in an apartment that person might be living in a shanty, or even in a luxurious palace where people would expect that only people who are mired in sense enjoyments and luxuries of external life would be living. A saint may not be living in such a place. So, they do not carry those symptoms at all. They look for all practical purposes just like any ordinary being, till you come in close contact with them. So, that is where you see in our comparatively modern times, you can say there were many such. One who became later on very well known person is Nisargadatta Maharaj, who was living in a small that rental apartment like thing, and was running right across his home or nearby a shop selling cigarettes and what we call in India pan and such items. He had that kind of a shop there. And so there was no way for people to understand by the external appearance. Didn't carry any such marks of having spiritual wisdom. And yet, when some people approached him, they saw the wealth of wisdom and the capability to carry it. to other person. And thus gradually he became more and more well known, and still he lived in the same place and did not wear any external signs of being spiritual or filled with such wisdom. He would talk the same way. And such people could be found as such anywhere doing various different businesses. There is a very illustrative story in Mahabharata that there was one mendicant. Swami Vivekananda has mentioned this beautiful story from Mahabharata in his book Karma Yoga. Very interesting and illuminating story. That there was one mendicant who was practicing austerities in forest, and then around the mid-morning or noon time he would go out to beg his food in the urban neighborhoods around. So one day it so happened that in the morning, as he was getting up after performing his daily rites of austerity and meditation, a crow from the tree dropped its dropping on this person. And this person angrily looked at that crow, and the mendicant had accumulated such power now that the crow just got burnt and fell on the ground. Now this mendicant became puffed up. Hey, see the power of my austerities, my spiritual practice. And then thinking like that, he set out with his begging bowl to collect some food for his meals. And as he approached the house, he called for food. There is a particular way of that the mendicants, they request for food. And he just gave that kind of a call and waited for a second, for a little while, and then came a sound from inside. Wait, Mr. Mendicant, or whatever, that it is. Please wait. I am busy serving my ailing husband, and I will come and give you the food. Just wait. And then this mendicant thought, oh, she doesn't know my powers. She is telling me to wait. And another, that the voice again from that woman rang. Here is not any crow or duck to get burnt. Please wait. And he got a shock of his life. Wow! How did this lady come to know of that incident? So now he waited patiently. The lady comes out, and then the mendicant saluted her and asked that, well, after receiving his alms, that how did you know? And she said, well, I am just an ordinary housewife, do my daily chores of work. I don't know anything about practicing austerities, but following my duties, doing my duties in an unselfish way, in a detached manner, I have just, it seems that I have got this power to see, to know. And the mendicant naturally was by now quite subdued. He received something from this asymptomatic carrier, a dose of wisdom. And then this woman further tells him, you see, if you want to learn more, there is nearby in the town a butcher's shop. That butcher will tell you more about this. And that was another shock to him. Of all people now, should I be learning from a butcher? Uh, it is considered not a very honorable profession, and so I have to learn. I am a mendicant. I have given up everything in the world and do meditations and practice austerities. Now I have to go and learn this from a butcher of all people. But he has by now understood that what that lady is telling makes sense, so he had no other choice. He went there and then found a butcher. He was selling meat to customers, and then he said that the butcher told, "Wait, let me finish with the customers, then we will talk about what you have come to ask." And then after the business was done, the butcher shut his shop and took this man to home and described him the secrets of what gets known as karma yoga, the yoga of action. So you can see that these carriers, they did not have any obvious symptoms to show that they are carriers, but they did have in their heart a lot of such wealth to give. They were carriers of it. You see Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother, great examples. Sri Ramakrishna in many respects was not at all a symptomatic carrier. Although he was living in the temple and was known as the priest of the Kali temple, but apart from that, he would be looked upon by many as an insane fellow. He had no learning, no art of giving lectures, but those who came close to him saw that he goes in a different plane and has a direct conversation with God. So there was, they saw that this person can really give. He has contact with that being who is beyond nature and pervades the nature. So it is, they therefore started getting it from this unsymptomatic carriers, and then they spread the news. Like Keshav Chandra Sen wrote an article about him, and then reading that article, Keshav Chandra Sen was a very famous religious teacher and a writer. Even this, it is heard that the Queen of England would come to listen to his talks. So a very learned and well-known person. So reading his article about Sri Ramakrishna, many started flocking to him. So, but there were not so many external signs. In fact, Sri Ramakrishna sometimes would caution against, that getting deluded by the external signs. We'll see about those things a little later. So this is how Sri Ramakrishna's personage was. He was a carrier, and later on, of course, people knew to look for those symptoms, that is samadhi, and the way he speaks about God, how he clears all the doubts. But still, there was no external, learning. Not that he was a learned exponent of Vedantic scriptures. He has not studied any Nyaya, Sankhya and such things. And yet people could get so much from him. In fact, he was the biggest carrier without much symptoms. And then Holy Mother, he has done better than Sri Ramakrishna. In fact, Sri Ramakrishna himself told her, you have to do a lot. And she said that, oh well, I am an ordinary woman, what can I do? He said, well, you have to do a lot. What have, pointing to his own body, Sri Ramakrishna said, what has this done? You have to do much more. And then that came to be true. She did not show even those things like getting into samadhi now and then and all that thing. She was doing all household chores, taking care of her, that extended family. She didn't have any, naturally, that kind of married life who doesn't expect any children. She didn't have any children, but her brothers, they were, after money. Although Holy Mother was such image of spiritual renunciation, her brothers, except the youngest one, didn't have any trace of it. So, and she was managing that whole household, serving them. A crazy household. You can see that she was doing all these works, cooking for when Sri Ramakrishna was alive, cooking for Sri Ramakrishna and all those devotees who would flock there, without any complaint. She looked like just a most ordinary woman, without any education and without any such ambition. She just was carrying her life, and people did not at all know that she is, as Swami Vivekananda described in his letter from the West about Holy Mother, that she is the great power. She is the Shakti, the universal power. And it is, I am more concerned that let there be a proper place for the mother and her daughters, that he meant that let there be an organization for spiritually practicing spirituality, women dedicating their lives to become nuns and practicing spirituality. He said, I want first that place to be made. Because he says in that letter, let me tell you that letter was written to the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, that none of you have understood the tremendous power of this ordinary looking mother. So, and she looked really very ordinary. She didn't give lectures. She didn't show anything. So many actually confused that there is that incident when she was in Varanasi, that some people heard that Holy Mother, some such person has come, and they came to see her. These women came to see her, and they saw that Holy Mother at that time was brooming the courtyard. And so what they expected was that Holy Mother there would be a nice big throne, and then there would be Holy Mother seated there. There will be attendants fanning her and so forth. There would be she would be adorned with a lot of jewelry and such things. But they were amazed at who is Holy Mother. And then somebody pointed out that is the Holy Mother. They could not believe their eyes. It is, she was the embodiment of the divine Mother of the universe, and she could distribute spirituality just by a glance, just by a touch, and the most powerful carrier without symptoms. This is to be seen, no symptoms, and yet the carrier. There are stories in the Upanishad. In Chandogya Upanishad, there is the story of a cartman. He would be like a porter would carry things in his cart. A very poor, most ordinary looking person. But he was shown to be a great carrier of wisdom whom the king approached for getting spiritually illumined. So, the external appearance would not show any symptoms of these people being carriers of spiritual wisdom. And yet, they are very powerful carriers. So, this is about this category, that asymptomatic carriers. They don't have symptoms, they are carriers, though nonetheless, big time carriers. Now, there are some with fake symptoms. They carry symptoms, but they do not carry any wisdom. Rather, they are showing these symptoms to cheat people. So they pose as spiritual teachers. They live in a religious looking place, put on prominently visible religious attires, signs, make massive shows, throw huge promises, exhibit magical powers. All this, you see, the world is full of these because they give big promises. And people like that everything should come to them without exerting. So they want shortcuts. So because of this weakness of people for shortcuts, that I want quick illumination. So there are such people who tell that, okay, just give me $500 and I will give you this Kundalini awakening and Samadhi. You don't have to do anything. Just deposit $500 with me and you will get that experience. I guarantee. It is. So, such charlatans and cheats and all these deceivers of people are there, and they make good business because the fault is not only with them, fault is also with people who want the shortcuts. They want something to happen in an irrational way in their life, and they do not care for what the scriptures tell, and without any trouble, easily they want to get the spiritual illumination. That is human tendency. That even in science and engineering you find this important principle. Everything, as it were, takes the path of least resistance. Now whether that it is all right, take the path of least resistance, provided that path goes where you actually want to go. So otherwise it is not a path at all, let alone be the path of least resistance. So therefore, when they get the big promises, in the world people get cheated by such things, big money, that okay, you don't have to do anything. Just these days, for last many years, in fact, now with the coronavirus situation, these spammers and cheats and spoofers, they also are having, a big time business of cheating people. That, oh, we can give you the face masks in big quantity. We have them in stock and very cheap. Only, in fact, we will give it to you free. Just sign this, go to click on this link, and that's it. So you click on that link thinking, and then, well, by the time you realize, all your data gets stolen, your computer gets locked, whatever, so many things happen. So this is how in the world these cheats work, and in the spiritual realm also these cheats are rampant. They put on those signs, they advertise very much that it is, I was, the copy, there is in India, they have different almanacs, and then there is one that we follow in our order, that almanac, Vishuddha Siddhanta Almanac. Now if you see their book, the almanac part is small, and all the advertisements mostly of these cheats and charlatans. That, okay, just we will give you these beads, and these beads will cure all your diseases, guaranteed. Why the coronavirus affected people, why government is spending so much money, just get one of them, let that fellow give the beads and all the problem would have gone. But such advertisements are just posted. These beads, a picture of some religious looking person is given. This particular person, long beard and sitting in deep meditation as it were, the beads sanctified, and specially some mantra has been put on them. Now use these and you will be prosperous in no time. All problems that you are facing, problem of family, problem of about the health, and everything will be taken care of. Your stars will just all shining bright. So people fall to these things. These are the symptomatic non-carriers. They cannot carry the wisdom at all. This is that part. This is the third part. Then they are, as Jesus mentioned, Jesus also warned people that they will come with big promises and so forth. They are the wolves in the sheep's cloak. They are from outside, they will look docile, nice like sheep. Inside, they are wolves. So one has to be very cautious about these symptomatic. They have fake symptoms, symptomatic non-carriers. And then there is now our attention, we will shift to the receivers. uh, if somebody has a very heightened capability to receive, then that person can receive from a non-carrier also. A non-symptomatic non-carrier. One can receive from that also if there is this heightened receptivity. The reason is everything has God in it. Everything is permeated with God. And so we can get it. We can get the wisdom from God through actually, strictly speaking, from anything. Anything can become a teacher for us. It does become if we have that receptivity. As Swami Vivekananda mentions that yes, this whole world is there to teach you, but it is only those who are having this high receptivity, they can learn from these. Others need a human teacher to ignite that inner fire. So he mentions this in Bhakti Yoga in his chapter on Guru. So that others need the teacher. But then there are of course people that whom the plants can teach. Now the plants are not out there symptomatically or asymptomatically being the carriers. They are just there. Stones are there and all that. But if a person sees that something, the carrier as it were gets awakened. It happens to devotees who already have devotion. So, there are examples. A person while walking saw a stone and thought, wow, this stone really resembles the Lord Ganesha's picture or Lord Ganesha's image. And now Lord Ganesha's image is that Lord Ganesha, yes and no, depends on how you see it. Now for that person, he saw that is the blessing of Lord Ganesha, that he found it. And he started praying. And thus that brought out the religious and the inner spiritual fervor in that person. Now that stone was not sitting there as a carrier, and many would have gone past that stone, and many might have just trampled on it. And yet, this person, because of the special receptivity, got connected to it. And so it was not symptomatic, and yet was an unconscious carrier. There was no carrier only because this person had a high sense of receptivity and so could glean that wisdom from it. So it is the special nature of intense receiver who gets it from anyone or anything. There is the example in Bhagavatam of Avadhuta, that Avadhuta had 24 teachers, and none of them were sitting there actually to teach Avadhuta. That it is, for example, that there was somebody who was that angling to pick the fish. They put the rod and was waiting, and then a man was passing, asked this person so many times. This person did not pay any attention. Why? Because his whole attention was there. And so, noting this, Avadhuta said that, oh, you are my teacher. When I am meditating, let my mind never get diverted to anything. Let it be just put on that. A procession passed close to a man who was also trying to, hunt something and was aiming with arrow, and so the whole big loud procession passed near this fellow. He did not budge from his position. That did not affect him. So Avadhuta said, oh, you are my teacher in meditation. There is the incident that he saw a kite got a piece of some meat and was carrying it. Now so many crows therefore started following that kite, and the kite was running here and there. The crows were chasing that kite. They were not letting that kite have any peace or any rest. The kite finally got so tired of flying to escape from these chasing crows. It dropped that piece of meat, and then the crows stopped chasing that kite. So now when Avadhuta sees this, he says, look, that is how when you renounce, when you give up, because of renunciation now all these worries, they were chasing you like crows. Those worries all stop when you renounce. So he said, oh kite, you are my teacher. Now there's this 24 teachers like that, and nobody was actually a symptomatic teacher, not even an unsymptomatic teacher. They were not carriers. For ordinary people, it won't matter at all. There is the story of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, a very illuminating story. He was going with his the procession, chanting the name of Lord, singing the glories of the Lord, and they all entered a village. And then every place has its speciality, and we tell that speciality. Even our Rhode Island, we tell nothing much special to be proud about, but then we tell that, our state has the longest name of all. You may say that yours is the tiniest state. Look at our name of the state. It is the longest amongst all these 50 states, the state of Rhode Island and Providence plantations. So we take pride in that. So people in that village, they were had some special things, and it was told that double drum is made in this, those double drums that they use for playing music. In the Bengali name for that is khol. So these khols, they are made from the clay of this village. This village has that special clay from which they are made. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya went into samadhi. Why? Well, this village, from here this clay comes, from which these coals are made, and using that we chant the name of Lord. The mind just like that, already so prone to think of God, that thread was enough for his mind to get merged in God. So now so many others were also there, and nobody thought anything special about that. But because of the intense longing for God, very pure, everything would get connected to God for him. That's it. Because everything is actually filled with God. Sri Ramakrishna saw while going in a cart, the cart was that carriage was passing in a lane where a lot of it was an area of prostitutes, and so he saw at them and then laughed, saluted, and went into samadhi. So now see, this is how Sri Ramakrishna would receive that. Now these all, of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Ramakrishna, they God incarnates, but even many others, looking at these things, now they get this message. One of my teachers told that he got this message while studying geometry. Simple, that in middle school or high school, you learn that some Euclidean theorems of geometry, that the theorem is, it is well-known thing that the two sides of a triangle measure always more than the other side. Triangle has three sides, so any two sides, if you add the lengths of them, they will be certainly more than the other one side. And then that gave him the idea that means the straight path is always good. In life, learn to take not a crooked path, but the straight path. So what I mean is that now that theorem was not a carrier as such of this wisdom, but then because of his intention connected to it, he learned that. So this is how the non-symptomatic and apparently non-carriers also can carry this wisdom if our mind has that heightened purity. And there is the reverse of that. I have not made a slide for that, but that is about, people with tremendous immunity to spiritual wisdom. So, like there are, the people, the carriers are around, but so many people, they don't get affected at all. Why? Because they have very high immunity developed. So the coronavirus does not affect them. So there are so many people who come in contact with this symptomatic or asymptomatic teachers. But they do not get anything from them because they have tremendous resistance already built up, immunity to this kind of knowledge. No, we don't want it. There are many incidents of like this in Sri Ramakrishna's life. There were so many employees in that Kali temple who saw Sri Ramakrishna daily, never got anything from them. Swami Sardananda said about this holy company that there should be that receptivity, then one gets it. He said that, look, don't worry if you did not get the chance to meet Sri Ramakrishna. Many of us say this, that, oh, had I been there during the times of Sri Ramakrishna, I would have attained the heights of spirituality by now. Now, my bad luck that no such person is now available whom I can meet. Sardananda Swami told that there were so many there. They did not get anything from Sri Ramakrishna. In Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna and then in Life of Swami Vivekananda, you read this, that Narendranath, so much attracted to Sri Ramakrishna, was convinced of the great power that this person possesses, And so he would bring some of his friends also to see Sri Ramakrishna with him. And he would tell Sri Ramakrishna to talk to them. Sri Ramakrishna, out of courtesy, say a few words, but wouldn't. Then he would tell Narendranath, well, they had no receptivity at all. They didn't want to hear anything. And they had they had that immunity, so they didn't get anything. Many devotees would come. They were rather visitors rather than devotees. I would meet Sri Ramakrishna just since we have come. Okay, there is a holy man who lives there. Like when we go to see some place like a tourist, then we are told, okay, this is there, that is there. Okay, since we have come, let's go. So it is, they would come to Sri Ramakrishna. This conversation, the enlightening conversation is going on with devotees, and a couple of them would get really charmed by that. They wanted to hear more and more. They would sit there. And then there were some who had come with them, said, hey, come on, we saw, let's go. And then, even then, these devotees wouldn't get up, and then they would ultimately, okay, you sit here, we will go and get into the boat, and we will reserve place for you also. What a funny thing, Sri Ramakrishna says this in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. So here are the people with so much of immunity, and thus, even though there may be all sorts of symptomatic, asymptomatic or others, carriers around, but they won't get anything. So, this is just an exposition of these ideas, these different types of carriers. So, let us therefore be sure to awaken our deep spiritual urge. If we awaken it, when that gets awakened, friends, then the symptomatic carriers certainly will be able to give us something. And let us be aware that there are asymptomatic carriers that also can give us a lot. There may be so many people who have this great wisdom around them. A lesser or more degree may be there, but everybody has something to give in terms of spirituality. Many of them, I won't say everybody, but many of them have this wisdom that they are ready to give if we can receive it. So we have to be on the lookout that, oh wow, be aware that the person sitting next to me in plane or in train, or just the shopkeeper that I have gone to in the shop, they can be carriers of wisdom. I can tell you that I have been taught a great lesson in Karma Yoga by one dentist assistant that I used to go formerly. And on that day, one of that assistants was absent, and so she was running about doing all works herself. And so when my turn came, and I said to her, oh, it must be today a lot of work for you. You must be quite tired today. She said, Swami, when I set out in the morning, I tell myself, you are not going to work, you are going to gym for a workout. Now, she had not read anything like Vivekananda or Sri Ramakrishna. She had no signs of being, religious. And yet, she said, therefore, I enjoy my work. This is a great gym that I go to. And other gyms, you have to go up and pay for the membership. This gym pays me. And then the dentist heard this and he came and said, so from next month, I am going to reduce your pay. I will cut some fees for this gym. It's all joke, But the point is that, see, if we take this lesson, how wonderful idea of karma yoga came from just the general talk of this person. So if we keep our minds open to receive this, there are so many asymptomatic carriers and you will meet them. If you are open to get it, you will surely meet them. So you can see that the life becomes then full of all these great teachings. The world is there to teach us. Many can teach us. We don't have to be like what Shakespeare says, that they see that there are tongues in trees, books in running brooks, sermon in the stones, and good in everything. Yeah, but we may not be at that level, but still we will see many very good carriers of this spiritual wisdom, although they may not have any symptoms. So let us remember that, and let us be watchful about those symptomatic non-carriers. They are cheats, the wolves in the skin of sheep. So these are two things we should keep in mind, and let us hope that thus we get infected, if that is the right word. May not be the right word. We let us get infected by this spiritual illumination that does not kill us, that gives us eternal life. So thank you, friends. Let us meditate on this idea for a few seconds, and then if you have any comments, questions, or you need amplification of certain ideas, let us have that. Yes, please. Any question there, Jitendra?
Yes, there are two questions. They are on similar line. If you want, I can ask both of them together.
Okay.
One is Lynette asking, how can you differentiate an awakened person from an insane person? Because it sounds like the awakened person operate in a higher level of consciousness that can be mistaken as crazy by average person. Second question is from Abhijit. Pranam Maharaj, thank you for your wonderful talk with interesting title. Give an example of symptomatic non-carriers. How can we recognize elevated spiritual people without getting influenced by appearance which appeal to our conditioning?
The questions are a little different. The first question, that it is because some look crazy, and then there are many crazy people, all are not carriers. So many don't have symptoms, but that doesn't automatically mean they are carriers. Sri Ramakrishna looked crazy, and so Sri Ramakrishna didn't go to school. But that doesn't mean that everyone who is school dropout and acts crazy is a carrier of spiritual wisdom. They what a person can do there is to watch for two things. One is renunciation. That person is not attracted to any so-called objects of enjoyment. And secondly, the love for God. These two are the what Swami Vivekananda noticed in Sri Ramakrishna. And that is what get noticed in these great people, extraordinary people who looked crazy. But there is this special mine of wisdom in them, that it is there is this renunciation, and they are not guided by the pulse of this world. They don't want any of those things. Not that they don't want to exert only, and the crazy person wants but doesn't want to exert. So these people don't care for it at all. Secondly, they have that devotion, immense love for God. So these are the characteristics to be looked at. So, and you can see that when they desire, our inner urge is for that thing. If there is that inner urge heightened, then we can see that. So that is an important thing, that even though the person looks crazy, one must look at these things, that there is this religious, there is exuberance there. By seeing this, there is a devotion that is there. There is, in appearance it is crazy, but there is that devotional element to that. So this is, and for Abhijit's question, that can be done more easily. That to find out that people with lot of such symptoms, if you see in them the attraction towards the sense pleasure, and they are using these religious symbols to, get their other sensual desires fulfilled. They are trying to extract money. Then be very careful that there is every chance that they are these cheats. So second thing, that why we get, and I mentioned that why we get cheated is also because our desires are kind of very much mixed up. That as I mentioned, we want always an easy way. In our spiritual retreats, that question gets asked very often. Can you tell Swamiji, whosoever is the Swami giving the retreat, can you tell us an easy way of doing meditation and getting this illumination? And now the emphasis on easy, that we don't want to exert. So when we want easy way, we have to remember this. There was a Marathi saint, Ramdas. So one of his sentence is like that if some teacher tells you that you can realize God without doing any spiritual practice or sadhana, such teacher, if you get 3 pies, don't take them. That it is important. शिष्यास न करविती साधन, ऐसे गुरु पैशाचे 3 मिळाले तरी न घेणे. Because there is that deception. It is so, therefore it is important that if we are very clear, there is much less chance of being deceived by the external symptoms. Thank you.
One question from Beth.
From?
from Beth. How
Beth.
do you see, how do we see God in people who appear to have the opposite symptoms, that is, who don't seem to hold spiritual values?
Oh, well, yeah, that is a different thing. First of all, God is in everything and everyone. Of course, that fact is to be remembered. But that doesn't mean we have to approach those people if they do not have these values in them. They don't have the love of God. Not only just symptoms, but there is actually, you see, no love of God, rather love of money and such things. But there you can see that God is appearing in these forms. That is, this is to be remembered, but one should not go too close to such people, because that company is not beneficial for invoking or heightening, increasing the spiritual tendencies in us. That it is God is there in everything, that has to be kept in mind. And so, therefore, there should not be the feeling of enmity towards anyone. Like Sri Ramakrishna used to say that a tiger also has God in him, but then that tiger should be, that God in tiger should be saluted from a distance, safe distance. So, don't go too close to that God. So, it is like that one has to remember that even in the cheats, even in these hardened criminals and all that, there is God in them also, absolutely no doubt about it. Keep that in your mind, that there is God in them too. But that doesn't mean that that person carries a spiritual illumination to give you. That may not be the case. And so, therefore, it is advisable and not to associate with such people. Yes, Shrikant?
Regarding this slide, an intense receiver, if you have a strong yearning, is there any more process that's required to become that intense receiver? I'm asking this
Okay, yes.
Sharma, where he was told to tend the cows by his teacher.
Yeah.
Was the yearning to be developed, or is there any more process to be developed?
Oh, a good question. That Shrikant's question is like this. For web listeners, I am again telling it, rephrasing it a bit, that in this slide it is mentioned that if there is the intense, this yearning, huh? Yes, receiving capability. If there is that intense receiving capability, then one can learn or get spiritual wisdom from anything. Now, how to get that? What is the process of increasing it? And he gives the example of in Chandogya Upanishad that there was a seeker Satyakama. So he approaches the teacher, and then the teacher tells him, go and tend the cows, go to the forest where there is a lot of grass and greenery, and let these cows feed well, and then when they become 100 or 1,000, bring them back. So here the cows and others, they teach this young boy. His name was Satyakama. So Satyakama learned these secrets from them. But his receptivity, see, this is a process of spiritual practice that he underwent. That it is, first of all, he went to a teacher. He didn't go directly to these asymptomatic carriers. And then he worshipped those things. He worshipped, served those cows. Now those cows were like the divine images for him. And so now the message came from those cow and other things in the nature that he was worshipping, serving every day. So that is how the divinity in those was awakened for him because of his worship. So that happens like a picture of Sri Ramakrishna or picture of say Mother Durga or Kali or Jesus, whatever you think of. If that picture is holy for you, if that picture is being served daily by you, if you are meditating on that, now that picture becomes carrier for you. So that is how that receptivity is to be increased. But again, this receptivity needs to be further increased. And by following this method, one comes to a level. The example is that of that Gopaler Ma, Aghormani Devi, that you worship and get it from a source first. Now that because of that, now you are able to see its manifestation in everything. So that became her condition. But first, we have to raise it through this spiritual practice, and then we have the capability of seeing it in everything. One can derive those lessons from everything and everyone. Yes. So friends, let us conclude with our regular closing prayers, before which let me tell you about the programs upcoming. These days Jitendra does not put them on the our these TV screens. The May 31st, before that there is May 24th. The topic is how to overcome fear. If you never have the fear problem, you don't need to attend this lecture, because this is the topic is how to overcome fear. So one may say, I don't have fear at all, so then that is a different thing. But otherwise we shall discuss the details, that how fear comes and how to overcome it. The other these classes during the week will go on as usual. The Tuesdays and Fridays, the 7:30 p.m. The Tuesday topic, as you all know, it is Sri Ramakrishna and his divine play, and Fridays it is the stories from Srimad Bhagavatam. So that is what we have to now for this week. And okay then friends, let us have the concluding prayers. May the Divine, who is Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Great Spirit of the Native Americans, Ahur Mazda of the Zoroastrians, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the all-loving being manifest himself unto us and grant us abiding understanding and all-consuming divine love. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.